Thursday morning, and we drove the entire length of the Dempster yesterday. Took us 13 hours. We weren't really planning on doing that, but the idea was we were going to stop at the Tombstone campground. One of the guys that we saw up in Tuk was telling us how nice that campground was. But once we got down there, it was full. And the kind of the dispersed campsites that we saw on the way down between the Klondike Highway and Tombstone were all right, but they were pretty full as well. So we ended up doing the whole length, and we stayed in this really crazy closed down RV park with still some remnants of the old days there. Not many, but there were a few. And that was right at the intersection of the Dempster and the Klondike. And I will tell you, last night was probably the chilliest night that we had to sleep. Not because the temperature was so low, I think it was 47 when we woke up. But it was raining, and the humidity was just so high. And my clothes were damp. The windshield of the Jeep was just covered in water. I don't know how to say that, but it was the condensation on the windshield was more than I've ever seen. It was more than a mist and a fog. It was actually wet. So a little chilly night, but we're on our way now to Dawson City and then on to Alaska. You can see it's still quite humid and kind of misty out. What are the initial thoughts on the Dempster Highway? I would say that in fact, there's really three sections of the highway. There's, in my mind, there's the junction to Tombstone, which honestly I thought the road was pretty decent. It wasn't rough. There was some construction going on, but when we went through last night, they were done for the day, so we breezed right on through that. But it was a relatively smooth road and easy going. Then you have the section from Tombstone to Eagle Plains, and that was my least favorite part of the highway from the actual highway standpoint. The road was hard packed, it was washboardy, it was potholed, it was just not a pleasant road to drive on. The scenery along the road, the whole entire road, is amazing, but the actual road, that section between Tombstone and Eagle Plains was my least favorite. And then from Eagle Plains north to Inuvik, really I thought that was pretty good, and we cooked right along. It took us a little bit of time waiting for the ferries at the Peel River and the Mackenzie, but other than that, we went along pretty well. Having said that, the motorcyclist we talked to said that they thought the worst section of the highway was Eagle Plains to Tuk. So our favorite section was their least favorite section. And I think it's because there was a lot of looser gravel, a lot of loose chert, and for the bikes, there was probably a lot of squirming. It wasn't real solid traction for those guys. So that was their least favorite. So depending on what you're driving, the different sections of the road are going to be your worst and least favorite. From the standpoint of the flat tires, we didn't see any until last night at the very end of the road where a Tacoma was alongside the road with a flat. It had two other people stop to help them, so that was the only thing that we saw. I will say though that I think the road is constantly changing. They're constantly doing road work on it. So different sections at different times will be harder on tires. And if you're using regular street tires, they recommend carrying 2 spares with you. Maybe that's overkill, but we read an article or a post from a fellow online that said he saw no flats on the way up, and on the way back he saw them everywhere, and one person actually had 3 flats at the same time. So I'm not going to say you don't need 2 spares. They recommend that for a reason. Now we have E-rated tires, which are a tougher tire. I wasn't worried about flats with these tires. but of course we do have a spare. So I think that's the advice I'd give on that. We also have a tire repair kit and a compressor. The scenery on the road is ever changing, and all of it is just beautiful. There is definite changes in the scenery as the elevations change on the road. I think the highest elevation we saw was about 3,100 feet, and of course in Tuk you're at about 10 feet. But you know, as you climbed up in elevation, you saw these barren tundra, and it just had this weird beauty of its own. Vast expanses of this golden tundra. Closer to Tombstone, you had the mountains. We found a bear across the road. That's a black bear running across the road in front of us this morning. So that's our second black bear, still no grizzly. Good eyes, camera lady. There was a nice valley down by Engineer Creek, which is an interesting creek. It actually has sulfides running into it, and as you cross one spot where there's a stream running into it, you smell the sulfur. It's quite strong. But that section is like these rolling, domed, I won't call them mountains, but they're bigger than hills, and they're just lovely green. We just rolled into Dawson City. And if you can picture this, late 1800s, 1888, 89, I think, the Klondike Gold Rush, this was the hub. People would leave Seattle, they'd take a ship to Skagway, climb that mountain, if you've ever seen the famous picture, get up to Whitehorse, then jump on a boat, come to Dawson City, then head into the hills to make their fortune. So I bet this was a happening place at that point in time. Boarded the last of the ferries. You have to take a ferry from Dawson City to West Dawson City. And we've started up the top of the world highway. We're not to the U.S. border yet, but it is foggy. I guess we are up at the top of the world. Must be in the clouds or something, but very little visibility up here. So slow going at this point. Hoping it clears up so we can see some of the views. It's supposed to be a gorgeous drive. So this is the first taste right here. Oh, clearing up. See some of the colors. Now we've got beautiful blue skies, so it's going to turn out pretty well, I think. Difference that elevation makes in flora. We're now at 34,000 feet, actually 4,000 feet, and we are now just surrounded by alpine meadow, I guess is what you would call it. We've lost the trees entirely, and I think this is a much different different and how much scenery changes. Across the border into Alaska at Poker Creek Ranger Station, or border crossing. And we're now on the Alaska side of the top of the road highway. The first section, I don't know how many miles, but the first section was paved. It was a very nice road. And now as we got to the junction between the Eagle Road and the Chicken Road, it's turned into kind of this dirt road, wet, somewhat slick, but not greasy. And what I would consider to be the proper sort of road service for this kind of area. Tree line, we're down much lower in elevation. As you can see, you're not going to get anywhere fast on this road. There was a big motorhome that we passed on the paved section. So, you know, if you come up this way, don't be in any hurry. We're just rolling into Chicken, and we just passed the trailhead. And a word of advice to all marketing folks: if you want people to go on your trail, Mosquito Fork Dredge Trail is probably not the best name for it. It certainly didn't inspire me to jump out of the Jeep and hike down that trail. And here is historic downtown Chicken. Wasn't much of a city, but had everything you need: a mercantile emporium, a saloon, and a cafe. So I'd say they've kind of got it all right here in Chicken. So a funny side story about Chicken is the story is that the original founders wanted to name the city ptarmigan, which is a native bird up here. But sadly, they couldn't agree on how to spell ptarmigan. So, being very judicious men who like to come to common agreement, they decided to throw ptarmigan out the window and name it Chicken. Quick panorama of the Chicken Saloon. Reminds me a lot of the Salty Dog on Homer's Spit. A small, comfortable spot with stuff hanging all around from folks that have visited. And a really nice, and I can say, well-functioning old wood stove. Well, as we've just arrived in Alaska, we have to do one of our traditions when we come to Alaska, which is to consume an Alaskan amber as soon as we get into the state. We are at the Chicken Creek Saloon, which we showed earlier, and we are consuming our first Alaskan amber. So cheers, and when you get to Alaska, make sure you try this beer. It's quite good.